Millionaire marries a ugly beggar for a bet, but what he discovers on their wedding night shocks Sage. In a world where money often talks louder than morals, what happens when a wealthy man, with everything to lose, makes a reckless bet that changes his life forever? Imagine this. Nathan Parker, a cold and arrogant millionaire, stands at the edge of a lavish party, champagne glass in hand, looking down on the city streets below. His sharp gaze falls on a woman sitting alone, her clothes worn, her face weary from years of hardship. To him, she's nothing more than a pawn in a game he believes he can't lose. But little does he know, this decision will unravel secrets, challenge his beliefs, and force him to confront emotions he's spent a lifetime burying. It all begins with a dare, a $2 million bet to turn this beggar into a high society lady and stay married to her for 3 months. What could possibly go wrong? The story starts with Nathan, a man who radiates confidence, but hides behind a mask of indifference. He moves through life as if everyone exists only to serve his ambitions. Money is his armor, power his weapon. When his old friend Michael Carter approaches him with a smirk and a provocative idea, Nathan doesn't hesitate. "See her?" Michael says, pointing toward the street below. That's your next challenge. For Nathan, it's just another transaction, another chance to prove his superiority. The woman, Emily Clark, is oblivious to the storm brewing above her. She's fighting battles no one else sees, clinging to scraps of dignity while battling hunger and despair. Yet something about her strikes Nathan, a flicker of strength in her tired eyes that intrigues him, even though he refuses to admit it. As fate would have it, Emily becomes entangled in Nathan's twisted plan without fully understanding the stakes. Desperation leads her to accept his offer, unaware that she's walking into a carefully orchestrated lie. Nathan promises luxury, security, and a way out of her struggles, all wrapped up in a marriage contract that feels more like a business deal than a union. At first glance, Emily seems like an easy target. She's vulnerable, broken, and willing to trust anyone who offers a lifeline. But beneath her fragile exterior lies a spirit that refuses to be crushed. Little does Nathan know, this so-called ugly beggar holds the key to unlocking parts of himself he thought were long dead. Their wedding night marks the beginning of a journey neither of them anticipated. As Nathan smugly celebrates his victory, believing he's won yet another meaningless conquest, Emily discovers a truth that shakes her to her core, a truth that forces her to question not only Nathan's intentions, but also her own worth. This revelation creates a ripple effect, pulling both characters into a whirlwind of emotions they aren't prepared to face. For Nathan, the stakes suddenly become higher than money or pride. For Emily, survival means finding strength she didn't know she had. Together, they are thrust into a battle of wills, trust, and redemption, a clash that leaves their future uncertain. What unfolds is a tale of transformation, vulnerability, and unexpected love. Both Nathan and Emily carry scars from their pasts, wounds that make them wary of letting anyone get too close. Nathan's childhood was shaped by a cold, unyielding father who taught him that emotions are weaknesses. Emily's life has been a series of downward spirals since losing everything she once held dear. Their paths cross not because of destiny, but because of a cruel twist of fate. Yet, in each other, they find something they weren't looking for, a chance to heal, to grow, and to redefine what it means to truly live. But don't be fooled. This isn't just a story about romance. It's about the choices we make when faced with impossible odds. It's about the courage to confront our darkest truths and the resilience to rise above them. As Nathan and Emily navigate their complicated relationship, they stumble upon moments of raw honesty that blur the lines between duty and desire. They argue, they hurt, and they push each other away, but they also laugh, dream, and dare to hope. Through every triumph and setback, they learn that love isn't always perfect or predictable. Sometimes it's messy, painful, and downright terrifying. One of the most compelling aspects of this story is how it challenges societal norms. Nathan represents a world obsessed with appearances, wealth, and status. Emily embodies the struggles of those who fall through the cracks, invisible to society's elite. When these two worlds collide, sparks fly, not just between them, but within themselves. Nathan must grapple with the realization that true success isn't measured by bank accounts or boardroom victories. Emily, on the other hand, learns that self-worth isn't tied to others' opinions or material possessions. Together, they inspire change, not just in each other, but in the communities they touch along the way. Their journey takes them far beyond the confines of Nathan's mansion, from visiting shelters and schools to launching initiatives aimed at uplifting marginalized groups. They discover the power of compassion and collaboration. These experiences shape them in profound ways, forcing them to confront their biases and broaden their perspectives. For Nathan, it's a humbling reminder that privilege comes with responsibility. For Emily, it's an opportunity to channel her pain into purpose, using her voice to advocate for those who feel voiceless. Slowly but surely, they transform not only themselves, but also the lives of countless others. Yet, despite their progress, shadows of doubt linger. Emily still wrestles with the fear of being used again, haunted by the memory of Nathan's betrayal. Nathan, meanwhile, struggles to prove that his transformation is genuine, knowing that actions speak louder than words. Just when it seems like they might find common ground, a new obstacle emerges, one that threatens to tear them apart. An unexpected visitor from Nathan's past arrives, reopening old wounds and testing the fragile bond they've built. This confrontation pushes both characters to their limits, forcing them to decide what truly matters: pride or love, revenge or forgiveness. As tensions mount, the narrative builds toward a pivotal moment that will define their future. Will Emily forgive Nathan for the pain he caused? Or will she walk away, choosing freedom over uncertainty? Can Nathan shed the layers of arrogance and guilt that have defined him for so long, becoming the man Emily deserves? These questions hang in the air, unanswered, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats. The story teeters on the brink of resolution, yet the outcome remains shrouded in mystery. Every glance, every word exchanged between Nathan and Emily carries weight, hinting at the emotional roller coaster ahead. Ultimately, this story is about second chances, the kind that require sacrifice, humility, and unwavering determination. It's about recognizing that people are more than their mistakes, that growth often stems from discomfort, and that love can blossom in the most unlikely places. Whether you're drawn to tales of redemption, intrigued by complex relationships, or inspired by stories of resilience, this narrative promises to captivate your heart and mind. So buckle up, because the journey of Nathan and Emily is just beginning. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where secrets unravel, alliances shift, and destinies collide. Nathan Parker wasn't always the cold, calculating man he appeared to be, growing up in a mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. He learned early on that emotions were liabilities. His father, a ruthless businessman who believed success was measured only by wealth and power, had drilled into him the idea that vulnerability was weakness. Nathan remembered sitting at the dinner table as a child, his small hands trembling as he tried to explain why he hadn't gotten perfect grades on a test. His father's response was predictable. Cold silence followed by a sharp rebuke. "Feelings don't fill bank accounts," his father would say, his voice devoid of warmth. It was a lesson Nathan carried into adulthood, shaping every decision he made. But it wasn't just his father who left an imprint on him. His mother, though kind and gentle, had been overshadowed by her husband's dominance. She often whispered words of encouragement to young Nathan when his father wasn't around, telling him stories about butterflies and transformation. "Change is beautiful," she'd say, holding his hand. "Even the ugliest caterpillar can become something breathtaking." But her voice faded from his life too soon. When she passed away unexpectedly, Nathan was only 12. Her death left a void he never truly filled, and his father wasted no time stepping in to mold him further into the image of the man he wanted him to be. By the time Nathan reached his 30s, he had become a mirror of everything his father valued: money, control, and detachment. Emily Clark's life, on the other hand, couldn't have been more different. Born into a modest family, she grew up knowing the value of hard work and kindness. Her parents ran a small diner in a quiet town, and though they didn't have much, they taught Emily the importance of compassion and resilience. Life wasn't easy, but it was full of love, until tragedy struck. A car accident claimed both her parents when she was barely 20, leaving her alone and drowning in medical bills. The diner was sold off to cover debts, and Emily found herself adrift, struggling to survive in a world that seemed determined to break her. Over the years, she drifted from one low-paying job to another, each failure chipping away at her confidence until she ended up on the streets, clutching a cardboard sign and hoping for scraps of humanity from strangers. When Nathan first spotted Emily that night, he saw none of this. To him, she was just another face in the crowd, someone whose misfortune could serve his purpose. He didn't know about the late nights she spent crying herself to sleep, or the way she still clung to fragments of hope despite everything. All he saw was an opportunity, a chance to win a bet and prove his superiority. And so, with a calculated smile and a rehearsed pitch, he approached her, offering her a lifeline wrapped in deception. The morning after their wedding, Emily woke up in the luxurious suite Nathan had arranged for her. Sunlight streamed through the massive windows, casting golden hues across the plush carpets and expensive furniture. For a moment, she allowed herself to marvel at the opulence surrounding her. But reality quickly set in. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was a transaction. As she sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the soft sheets, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had sold a piece of her soul. The promise of $1 million was tempting, but the cost weighed heavily on her heart. Downstairs, Nathan was already dressed and waiting. His demeanor was calm, almost clinical, as he reviewed documents at the dining table. When Emily entered, he looked up briefly before returning his attention to the papers. "Good morning," he said, without looking at her. "Breakfast will be served shortly. We have a lot to discuss." Emily hesitated, unsure of how to navigate this new dynamic. "What exactly are we discussing?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the storm brewing inside her. Nathan placed the papers down and turned to face her. "Your transformation," he replied matter-of-factly. "You'll need to adapt to a certain lifestyle if we're going to pull this off convincingly." "Pull what off?" Emily shot back, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "This isn't real, remember. Just a 3-month charade." Nathan raised an eyebrow. unfazed by her tone. True, but appearances matter. People will expect you to fit into my world, and I intend to make sure you do. Over the next few days, Emily endured endless fittings, etiquette lessons, and posture drills. Each session felt like a reminder of how out of place she was in Nathan's world. The stylist tugged at her hair, the instructors corrected her speech, and the posture coach scolded her for slouching. Yet, amidst the chaos, Emily began to notice something unexpected. Despite her initial resistance, she found herself adapting. The clothes, though foreign, gave her a sense of confidence she hadn't felt in years. The lessons, though tedious, taught her skills she realized could be useful beyond the confines of Nathan's game. Meanwhile, Nathan observed her progress with a mix of admiration and unease. There was a fire in Emily that intrigued him, a strength he hadn't anticipated. She wasn't like the women he usually encountered, polished and eager to please. Instead, she challenged him, pushing back against his authority and forcing him to reconsider his assumptions. One evening, as they dined together in the grand hall, Nathan broke the silence. "You're handling this better than I expected," he remarked, his tone softer than usual. Emily glanced at him, surprised by the compliment. "I'm not doing it for you," she replied sharply. "I'm doing it for me." Nathan nodded, unfazed by her hostility. "Fair enough, but you're proving to be more resilient than I gave you credit for." Their interactions grew more frequent, each conversation revealing layers neither of them had anticipated. During one such exchange, Emily confronted Nathan about his motives. "Why me?" she demanded, her voice laced with suspicion. "Out of all the people in the world, why did you choose me?" Nathan leaned back in his chair, considering her question. "Because you were there," he admitted bluntly. "And because I knew you'd accept." Emily narrowed her eyes, her anger simmering beneath the surface. "And what happens after these 3 months are over? Do I just disappear again?" Nathan hesitated, caught off guard by the intensity of her question. "That depends on you," he said finally. "If you want to stay, I won't stop you." For a moment, Emily considered his words, searching for any hint of sincerity. But the walls she had built around her heart remained firmly in place. Trust, she reminded herself, was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not with someone like Nathan. As the weeks passed, tensions between them continued to simmer. Emily struggled to reconcile the man she saw now with the one who had humiliated her years ago. Memories of that fateful interview haunted her, fueling her doubts about Nathan's intentions. Yet there were moments when his actions contradicted her suspicions. He listened when she spoke, genuinely interested in her thoughts. He supported her ideas, even encouraging her to take the lead on some of his social projects. These gestures, though small, planted seeds of doubt in Emily's mind. Was it possible that Nathan was capable of change? One afternoon, while visiting a shelter for women escaping abusive relationships, Emily witnessed a side of Nathan she hadn't seen before. As they toured the facility, he knelt beside a young mother holding her infant, listening intently to her story. "It's hard to trust people after what I've been through," the woman confessed, her voice trembling. "I understand," Nathan replied, his expression serious. "But you're stronger than you think." Emily watched the interaction from a distance, her heart stirring with conflicting emotions. Could the man who had once dismissed her as an amateur truly empathize with someone else's pain? Or was this just another act designed to manipulate those around him? Back at the mansion that evening, Emily found herself unable to shake the image of Nathan comforting the young mother. Sitting alone in her room, she replayed the scene in her mind, searching for answers. Just as she was about to give in to exhaustion, a knock on her door startled her. It was Nathan, standing awkwardly in the hallway, holding a glass of wine. "May I come in?" he asked, his tone unusually hesitant. Emily hesitated before nodding, stepping aside to let him enter. They sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, Nathan broke the silence. "I know you don't trust me," he began, his voice low. "And I don't blame you. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be better for you." Emily studied him carefully, her heart torn between skepticism and hope. "Trying isn't enough," she replied softly. "Actions speak louder than words." Nathan nodded, accepting her challenge without protest. "Then watch me," he said simply. "Let my actions prove what my words cannot." As the days turned into weeks, Nathan threw himself into their shared projects with renewed vigor. Together, they visited schools, shelters, and community centers, working tirelessly to make a difference. With each passing day, Emily found herself drawn to Nathan's dedication. Even as her fears lingered, the tension between them remained palpable, a constant reminder of the unresolved questions hanging over their relationship. And then, just as Emily began to consider the possibility of forgiving him, Michael Carter reappeared, shattering the fragile peace they had built. Standing in the garden, his cynical smile sending chills down Emily's spine, Michael taunted Nathan about the bet. "So, how's it going with your new wife?" he sneered. "Almost time to collect your winnings, huh?" Emily's blood ran cold as she overheard the conversation from behind a column. Her worst fears were confirmed. The man she had begun to trust was still playing games. Stepping out from her hiding spot, she confronted Nathan, her voice trembling with betrayal. "Is it true?" she demanded. "Did you cancel the bet, or is this all still part of your sick game?" Nathan turned to her, startled by her sudden appearance. "Emily, I can explain," he began, reaching for her. But Emily backed away, tears streaming down her face. "Don't touch me," she shouted. "I trusted you." The confrontation left both of them shaken, their fragile bond teetering on the edge of collapse. Nathan knew he had to act quickly if he wanted to salvage what little trust remained. But Emily's wounds ran deep, and forgiveness wouldn't come easily. As the sun set over the mansion, casting long shadows across the garden, the future of their relationship hung precariously in the balance. The days following Michael's unexpected visit were charged with an unsettling tension. Emily couldn't shake the image of Nathan standing there, his face a mix of guilt and resolve. As he tried to explain himself, she wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he had cancelled the bet because she mattered more than money or pride. But her heart was still scarred from years of betrayal. Every time she looked at Nathan, she saw two versions of him: the man who humiliated her in that interview room, and the man who now seemed determined to prove his worth. It was exhausting, this constant battle between hope and fear. Nathan, for his part, wasn't making things easier on himself. He threw himself into their shared projects with renewed vigor, almost as if trying to outpace Emily's doubts. Together, they visited shelters, schools, and community centers, meeting people whose lives were being transformed by their efforts. But even amidst these moments of connection, Nathan felt the weight of Emily's lingering mistrust. He noticed how she hesitated before speaking, how her smiles never quite reached her eyes. It was a reminder that actions, no matter how grand, couldn't erase the past overnight. One afternoon, while visiting a rehabilitation center for recovering addicts, Emily found herself drawn to a young man named Marcus. His story mirrored hers in many ways: loss, despair, and a desperate desire to start over. As Marcus spoke about his struggles, Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "It's like I'm fighting against myself every day," he admitted, his voice trembling. "But knowing someone believes in me makes all the difference." Emily placed a hand on his shoulder, offering what little comfort she could. "You're stronger than you think, Marcus. Don't give up." Her words carried a weight she hadn't intended, as if she was speaking not just to him but to herself. Standing beside her, Nathan observed the exchange, silently, his expression unreadable. When they left the center later that evening, he finally broke the silence. "You have a way with people," he said softly. "I admire that." Emily glanced at him, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. "It's easy to connect when you've been where they are," she replied, her voice tinged with both bitterness and empathy. "But it's harder when you're dealing with someone who keeps changing the rules." The jab landed squarely, and Nathan flinched visibly. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the air thick with unspoken words. Back at the mansion, Emily retreated to her art studio, seeking solace in the rhythmic strokes of her brush. Painting had always been her escape, a way to channel emotions, too raw to confront directly. Tonight, however, her mind refused to settle. Images of Nathan's cold gaze during the interview years ago clashed with memories of his recent kindnesses. Was he truly changing? Or was this just another phase? A bad performance meant to win her forgiveness? The uncertainty gnawed at her, leaving her restless and irritable. Meanwhile, Nathan paced the length of his study, replaying the events of the day in his mind. He knew he had hurt Emily deeply, and hearing her sharp words only reinforced the enormity of his mistake. Yet beneath the guilt lay something else, a flicker of determination. He had spent most of his life believing that power and control were the keys to success. But Emily had shown him otherwise. Love, vulnerability, and genuine human connection, these were the forces that truly shaped lives. The realization terrified him, but it also gave him purpose. As the days turned into weeks, small cracks began to form in the walls between them. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Nathan joined Emily in the garden. She was sitting on a stone bench, her knees pulled close to her chest, staring at the stars. He hesitated before approaching, unsure if she wanted company. "May I sit?" he asked gently. Emily nodded without looking at him. They sat in silence for a while, the cool night breeze rustling the leaves around them. Finally, Nathan spoke. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, that I keep changing the rules. You're right, I do, and it's unfair to you." His admission caught Emily off guard. She turned to look at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Because I want you to know I'm aware of my mistakes," Nathan replied, his gaze steady. "And because I need you to understand that I'm not doing this halfway. If you choose to stay, I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Emily stared at him, her heart pounding. There was a raw honesty in his words that she couldn't ignore. Yet the scars of the past still whispered warnings in her ear. "What if I can't forgive you?" she asked quietly. "What if I'm too broken to let anyone in?" Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Then I'll wait. I'll wait until you're ready, even if it takes years. But please don't shut me out completely." For the first time in what felt like forever, Emily allowed herself to consider the possibility that Nathan might be sincere. Still, she couldn't bring herself to fully trust him, not yet. Instead, she changed the subject, asking about the next project they planned to launch. Nathan obliged, grateful for the shift in conversation. As they discussed logistics and timelines, a tentative ease settled between them, a fleeting glimpse of the partnership they could become. Unbeknownst to either of them, Michael Carter was watching from afar. He had grown increasingly frustrated with Nathan's refusal to honor the original terms of the bet. To Michael, this wasn't just about money. It was about proving a point. In his mind, Nathan's transformation was a weakness, a betrayal of the ruthless ambition they had once shared. Determined to expose what he saw as hypocrisy, Michael began digging into Emily's past, searching for ammunition to use against them both. His investigation led him to Clara, Emily's old friend from her days on the streets. At first, Clara was reluctant to speak with Michael, sensing his manipulative intent, but when he offered her a substantial sum of money, her resolve wavered. She agreed to meet him, unaware of the storm she was about to unleash. When Clara reluctantly shared fragments of Emily's history, her struggles, her resilience, and her eventual rise from homelessness, Michael listened intently, piecing together a narrative he could twist to his advantage. By the end of their meeting, he had crafted a plan designed to shatter the fragile trust Nathan and Emily were building. Back at the mansion, Emily remained oblivious to the danger brewing in the shadows. She focused instead on the upcoming gala, an event meant to raise funds for the community center they were constructing. It was a chance to showcase their work and inspire others to contribute. For Nathan, it represented an opportunity to demonstrate his commitment, not just to Emily, but to the values they now shared. As the date of the gala approached, preparations consumed their days. Dresses were fitted, speeches rehearsed, and final touches added to the venue. Despite the whirlwind of activity, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was subtle, a glance exchanged between staff members, a phone call cut short, but it lingered at the edges of her awareness, a nagging sense that trouble was looming. On the night of the gala, the mansion sparkled with lights and laughter. Guests mingled freely, admiring the displays and applauding Nathan and Emily's efforts. Yet, as Emily stood beside Nathan, accepting praise and shaking hands, she noticed a familiar figure slipping through the crowd. It was Michael, his smirk unmistakable as he made his way toward them. Her stomach churned with unease. Whatever Michael had come to say, it wouldn't be good. Clutching Nathan's arm tightly, she whispered, "We need to talk. Now." Nathan followed her gaze, his jaw tightening as he spotted Michael. Without hesitation, he guided Emily away from the crowd, seeking refuge in a quiet corner of the garden. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. Before Emily could respond, Michael appeared, holding a folder filled with documents. "I thought you should see this," he said, his tone dripping with malice. "It's amazing what secrets people keep when they're trying to reinvent themselves." Emily's blood ran cold as she recognized the contents of the folder. Photographs, letters, and records detailing her darkest days. Michael had weaponized her past, turning it into a tool to destroy everything she and Nathan had built. The room seemed to spin as she realized the magnitude of the threat. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the life they had dared to dream of together. "What do you want, Michael?" Nathan demanded, stepping protectively in front of Emily. Michael chuckled darkly. "Just to remind you both that some things can't be erased, no matter how hard you try." With those chilling words, he turned and walked away, leaving Emily and Nathan frozen in stunned silence. The gala continued behind them, oblivious to the storm that had just erupted. The gala had been a facade, a glittering distraction from the storm brewing beneath the surface. As Emily stood frozen in the garden, her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. Michael's folder of secrets loomed large in her thoughts, its contents threatening to unravel everything she and Nathan had built, or at least what she thought they had built. She wanted to confront him, to demand answers. But the look on Nathan's face stopped her. For the first time, he didn't seem indifferent or calculating. He looked scared. Nathan could see the betrayal in Emily's eyes, raw and unfiltered. It was the same look she'd given him years ago, during that fateful interview. Only this time it cut deeper. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away instinctively. "Emily, please," he began, his voice trembling. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" she snapped, her voice shaking with anger. "That you've been lying to me this whole time? That I'm just another pawn in your game?" "No," Nathan insisted, stepping closer despite her resistance. "I ended the bet, Emily. I cancelled it because I realized you mean more to me than any amount of money." Emily clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. "Then why didn't you tell me about it sooner? Why did Michael have all those documents detailing every step of your so-called challenge?" Nathan hesitated, guilt flashing across his features. "Because I was afraid," he admitted finally. "Afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid you'd leave before I had a chance to prove myself." His vulnerability caught her off guard, but Emily wasn't ready to let her guard down. Not yet. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me the truth," she shot back, tears welling up in her eyes. "Instead, you kept me in the dark, letting me think." Her words were cut short as Michael reappeared, his smirk widening as he approached them. "Oh, don't stop on my account," he said mockingly. "This is getting interesting." Nathan turned to face him, his expression hardening. "Leave, Michael. This doesn't concern you." Michael laughed, clearly enjoying the chaos he had created. "On the contrary, it concerns me very much. You see, Nathan, when you decided to cancel the bet, you broke our agreement, and now I'm here to collect what's owed." "What are you talking about?" Nathan demanded, his tone sharp. Michael pulled out a folded document from his jacket, a pocket, and waved it in the air. "This little piece of paper says you owe me $2 million. The terms were clear. If you backed out of the bet, the full amount would be due immediately. So, unless you plan to pay up, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are, including your precious wife." Emily's heart sank as the implications hit her. If Michael exposed the truth, it wouldn't just destroy her trust in Nathan, it would ruin the lives of the people they had worked so hard to help. The shelters, the scholarships, the community center. All of it would be tainted by the revelation that Nathan's initial intentions had been rooted in greed and manipulation. "You wouldn't dare," Nathan growled, taking a step toward Michael. "Try me," Michael replied coolly. "Unless, of course, you can find another way to settle the debt." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Emily watched as Nathan wrestled with his emotions, his knuckles white as he clenched his fists. She knew he was weighing his options, trying to find a solution that wouldn't cost them everything they had fought for. But deep down, she also knew there was no easy way out of this mess. Finally, Nathan spoke, his voice low but resolute. "Fine. Name your price." Michael raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "My price? Well, that's simple. You give me control of Parker Enterprises for 6 months. In return, I'll keep quiet about the bet and walk away." "No," Emily exclaimed, stepping forward. "You can't do that, Nathan. Your company is everything you've worked for. And if I don't agree, Michael will destroy us," Nathan countered, his gaze locking onto hers. "I won't let him take away what we've built together." "But at what cost?" Emily asked, her voice breaking. "If you hand over your company, you'll lose yourself. Is that really worth it?" Before Nathan could respond, Michael interrupted with a sly grin. "Oh, don't worry, Emily. He won't lose himself. He'll just learn a lesson about humility." Besides, it's not like he has a choice. The weight of the situation pressed down on Emily, suffocating her. She felt trapped, caught between two men who seemed determined to use her as leverage. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a spark of determination ignited within her. She refused to be a victim again. Not this time. Turning to Nathan, she grabbed his arm and pulled him aside. "We need to think of another way," she whispered urgently. "Giving Michael control of your company isn't the answer." "And what do you suggest?" Nathan asked, his frustration evident. "He's already holding all the cards." Emily hesitated, her mind racing. Then inspiration struck. "What if we expose him instead?" she suggested, her voice barely audible. "If we can prove he manipulated the bet, maybe we can turn the tables on him." Nathan frowned, considering her idea. "It's risky. If we fail, it'll only make things worse." "We don't have a choice," Emily insisted, her resolve strengthening. "If we sit back and let him win, we'll lose everything, including ourselves." Nathan studied her for a moment, seeing the fire in her eyes that had captivated him from the start. Slowly, he nodded. "All right, let's do it." As they formulated a plan, Michael grew impatient. "Are we done playing games yet?" he called out, tapping his foot dramatically. "I haven't got all night." "We're just getting started," Nathan replied, his tone icy. "And trust me, Michael, you won't like where this is going." With that, the three of them moved indoors, the tension thick enough to choke on. Every word exchanged carried the weight of impending consequences, each decision bringing them closer to a confrontation that would change their lives forever. Emily and Nathan worked quickly, gathering evidence and piecing together clues that could expose Michael's manipulative schemes. But as the clock ticked closer to midnight, doubts began creeping in. Would their plan work? Or were they walking straight into a trap? In the final moments before the showdown, Emily found herself alone in the study, staring at a photograph of her parents. Memories of their love and resilience flooded her mind, giving her the strength she needed to face whatever came next. She placed the photo back on the desk and took a deep breath. Whatever happened, she vowed to fight, not just for herself, but for the life she and Nathan had dared to dream of. When she rejoined Nathan in the grand hall, she saw the determination in his eyes mirroring her own. Together, they stood side by side, ready to face Michael and whatever truths lay waiting to be uncovered. The room felt smaller somehow, the air charged with anticipation. As Michael entered, smug and self-assured, Emily tightened her grip on Nathan's hand. The battle lines were drawn, and there was no turning back now. As Emily and Nathan stood together in the garden, the weight of their unresolved conflict hanging heavily between them, a sudden commotion near the mansion's gates shattered the fragile calm. A black SUV screeched to a halt, its tires skidding on the gravel driveway. Out stepped Michael Carter, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him was a woman Emily didn't recognize at first, until she spoke. "Emily Clark," the woman said, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Or should I say Emily Parker now? Do you remember me?" Emily froze, her breath catching in her throat. It took her a moment to place the face, the hardened eyes, the cold smirk. It was Clara, her old friend from the streets. But something about her demeanor had changed. Gone was the warmth and vulnerability Emily remembered. Instead, Clara radiated hostility, her gaze piercing through Emily like daggers. "What are you doing here?" Emily finally managed to ask, her voice trembling. Clara crossed her arms, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "Michael paid me a visit. He told me everything. The bet, the lies, the whole charade. And now it's time for everyone to know who you really are." Nathan stepped forward, his body instinctively shielding Emily. "Stay out of this, Clara," he warned, his tone low but firm. "Whatever Michael promised you, it's not worth it." "Oh, but it is," Clara shot back, her eyes narrowing. "You think I care about your money or your games. This isn't just about exposing you two. It's about justice. For all the people you've used and thrown away like trash." Emily felt the ground beneath her feet shift. She had trusted Clara once, shared some of her darkest moments with her during their days on the streets. To see her now, standing as an adversary, fueled by anger and betrayal, cut deeper than any insult Michael could have thrown at her. "Clara, please," Emily pleaded, stepping out from behind Nathan. "You don't understand what's happening. Here, yes, there was a bet, but that's not who we are anymore." Nathan ended it. "We're trying to make things right." Trying. Clara laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from someone who sold herself for $1 million. The words hit Emily like a punch to the gut. She wanted to defend herself, to explain how far she'd come since those desperate days. But the truth was messy, and Clara wasn't interested in hearing excuses. Instead, Clara pulled out her phone, holding it up triumphantly. "I've already sent the story to every major news outlet in the city," she announced. "By tomorrow morning, the world will know exactly what kind of man Nathan Parker really is. And what kind of woman you are, Emily." Panic surged through Emily's veins. The thought of their private struggles becoming public spectacle terrified her, not just for herself, but for the people they had worked so hard to help. The shelters, the scholarships, the community center. All of it would be tainted if the media painted them as frauds. Nathan grabbed Emily's hand, his grip tight, but reassuring. "We can fix this," he whispered urgently. "We'll find a way." But Clara wasn't done yet. With a flick of her wrist, she tossed a stack of papers onto the ground. "Here's proof," she said smugly. "Photos, documents, emails, everything. You need to destroy your perfect little life." Emily bent down to pick up the papers, her hands shaking as she flipped through them. Each page was a dagger aimed straight at her heart. Screenshots of Nathan discussing the bet, receipts for extravagant purchases made under false pretenses, even candid photos of Emily looking lost and vulnerable on the streets. It was a nightmare, come to life, a meticulously crafted dossier designed to dismantle everything they had built. Nathan cursed under his breath, running a hand through his hair. "This is my fault," he muttered, guilt etched across his face. "I should have seen this coming. I should have protected you." "You didn't protect anyone," Clara snapped, her voice rising. "You played games with people's lives because you thought you were untouchable. Well, guess what? Nobody's untouchable." Before either Emily or Nathan could respond, Michael stepped forward, clapping his hands slowly. "Bravo, Clara," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "You've done exactly what I asked. Now let's sit back and watch the fireworks." The tension in the air was suffocating. Emily felt like she was drowning, caught between the past she couldn't escape and the future she desperately wanted to protect. She turned to Nathan, searching his eyes for answers, for reassurance, for anything that might anchor her in this storm. "What do we do now?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the pounding in her ears. Nathan hesitated, his jaw tightening as he processed the gravity of the situation. "We fight," he said finally, his voice steady, despite the chaos around them. "We fight for the truth, for us." But fighting wouldn't be easy. As they retreated inside the mansion, the reality of their predicament began to sink in. The clock was ticking, and with each passing second, the stakes grew higher. If they couldn't find a way to counter Clara and Michael's attack, their lives, and the lives of countless others, would be irreparably damaged. That night, as Emily lay awake in bed, Her mind raced with possibilities. She thought about the art studio Nathan had built for her, the butterfly pendant that symbolized transformation, and the countless hours they had spent working side by side to create something meaningful. Could all of that truly be erased by a single act of vengeance? Determined not to give up, Emily slipped out of bed and headed to the study. There, amidst scattered papers and half-finished plans, she found Nathan pacing anxiously. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability that mirrored her own. "We can't let them win," Emily said firmly, her voice cutting through the silence. "Not after everything we've been through." Nathan stopped pacing and looked at her, his expression softening. "You're right," he replied. "But how do we stop them without losing ourselves in the process?" Emily opened her mouth to respond, but the sound of breaking glass interrupted her. They both froze, their hearts pounding as they realized the danger wasn't over. It was just beginning. The sound of breaking glass shattered the tense silence in the mansion's grand hall. Emily and Nathan turned sharply toward the source, their hearts pounding, as shards of a shattered vase lay scattered across the marble floor. Standing there, with a smug grin that sent chills down their spines, was Michael. But this time, he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Clara, her expression unreadable, holding a folder thick with documents. "You didn't think it would end so easily, did you?" Michael sneered, stepping further into the room. "I told you I'd make sure everyone knows who you really are." Emily felt her legs weaken beneath her, but Nathan moved instinctively, placing himself between her and Michael. "What more do you want?" Nathan demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Michael chuckled, tossing the folder onto a nearby table. "Oh, just to finish what I started. These documents, they're not just about your little bet. They're proof of every shady deal, every loophole you've exploited over the years. And guess what? The media already has copies." Nathan froze, his mind racing. He knew Michael had been digging into his past, but he never imagined the scope of the betrayal would be this vast. Emily, however, wasn't ready to back down. She stepped forward, her voice steady, despite the storm inside her. "You can destroy us if you want, Michael, but it won't change anything. What we've built, what we've done for people, it's real. You can't take that away." Michael raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "How poetic. But let's see how long your precious projects last. When Parker Enterprises crumbles under scandal." Before Nathan could respond, Clara stepped forward, her gaze locked on Emily. For a moment, she looked conflicted, her earlier hostility wavering. Then, without warning, she snatched the folder from the table and held it tightly against her chest. "Enough," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "This ends now." Everyone froze, stunned by her sudden shift. Michael stared at her in disbelief. "What are you doing? This was our plan." Clara shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "No, Michael, this was your plan. I thought exposing them would give me closure. For everything Nathan took from me, for all the times I felt invisible next to his wealth. But seeing how hard they've worked, how much they've changed." Her voice broke, and she glanced at Emily. "I remember the girl who shared her last meal with me on the streets. That's who you are, Em. Not some pawn in his game." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat, her anger softening just enough to see the pain behind Clara's words. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Michael, livid, lunged toward Clara, trying to grab the folder, but Nathan intercepted him, shoving him back with surprising force. "Stay away from her," he growled, his protective instincts kicking in. The two men grappled briefly before security guards rushed in, alerted by the commotion. Within moments, Michael was restrained, his face red with fury. "You'll regret this," he shouted as they dragged him out. "Both of you." As the chaos subsided, Clara handed the folder to Emily. "It's all here," she said softly. "Proof of everything Michael planned, and evidence that could clear your names if needed." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "We'll figure it out. Together." Turning to Nathan, she saw the exhaustion etched on his face. But also something else? Gratitude. But just as they thought the worst was over, another twist emerged. As Emily flipped through the pages, one document caught her eye. A letter addressed to Nathan from his late mother. It was dated shortly before her death. Written in delicate handwriting. Curious, she began reading aloud. "Dear Nathan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But please know that my love for you will always guide you. There's something I need to tell you. Something I couldn't bring myself to say while I was alive. Your father, he wasn't the man you thought he was. His cruelty masked his own failures. And he passed those burdens on to you. Don't let his legacy define you. Be kind, be brave, and above all, find someone who sees the good in you, even when you can't see it yourself." The room fell silent as Emily lowered the letter, her hands trembling. Nathan's eyes were wide, unshed tears glistening in the corners. "I didn't know," he stammered, his voice cracking. "All these years I thought he was right, that feelings were weakness. But maybe he was wrong." Emily finished gently, reaching for his hand. "Maybe you've spent your whole life proving him right, instead of living for yourself." For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of the revelation hung heavy in the air, mingling with the lingering scars of the night's events. Finally, Nathan exhaled sharply, squeezing Emily's hand. "Then I'll start today, with you." But fate wasn't done testing them yet. Just as they embraced, the front door burst open again, this time revealing a group of reporters and photographers, flooding the entrance. Flashbulbs popped wildly as questions flew from every direction. Is it true about the bet? Did you really cancel it? What about the scandals involving Parker Enterprises? Panic surged through Emily, but Nathan surprised her once more. Stepping forward, he raised his hands to quiet the crowd. When the noise died down, he spoke, his voice calm but commanding. "Yes, there was a bet. And yes, I ended it because I realized Emily means far more to me than any amount of money or pride. As for the allegations against my company, I welcome the investigation. Transparency is the only way forward." The reporters erupted into a frenzy, scribbling notes and snapping photos. Amid the chaos, Emily watched Nathan with newfound admiration. He wasn't just fighting for them, he was fighting for redemption. When the reporters finally left, the mansion felt eerily quiet. Exhausted but resolute, Emily and Nathan sat together in the study, the folder still sitting on the desk between them. "We have a lot of work to do," Nathan admitted, rubbing his temples. "Rebuilding trust. With you, with the public, with myself." Emily placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Everything won't be fixed overnight," she said softly. "But we'll get through it, together." Just as they began discussing their next steps, the phone rang. Nathan answered it hesitantly, his brow furrowing as he listened. When he hung up, his expression was unreadable. "That was the board," he explained. "They've decided to suspend me as CEO pending an internal review." Though the news hit hard, Nathan managed a faint smile. "At least it buys us time to focus on what really matters." As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light through the windows, Emily realized something profound. The battles they'd fought, the lies, the betrayals, the revelations had stripped them bare, leaving only the truth. And in that truth, They found something worth fighting for: each other. Yet as they stood together, watching the sunrise, a final twist awaited. A courier arrived with an envelope marked urgent. Inside was a legal notice. Michael had filed a lawsuit against both of them, claiming defamation and breach of contract. The fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. As the lawsuit loomed over them, Nathan and Emily found themselves at a crossroads. The weight of Michael's accusations and the media scrutiny threatened to undo everything they had fought for. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared resolve to face this final challenge together. Nathan looked at Emily one evening as they sat in the study, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp. "Whatever happens next," he said quietly, "we'll get through it, as long as we're together." Emily nodded, her hands clasped tightly around a cup of tea. "I believe that too," she replied. "But believing isn't enough. We need to act, to show everyone who we really are." The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Nathan reached out to his legal team, determined to fight the lawsuit with transparency and integrity. Meanwhile, Emily focused on rallying support from the communities they had helped. The shelters, schools, and rehabilitation centers that bore witness to their efforts. Together, they crafted a defense, not just for themselves, but for the values they stood for: compassion, redemption, and second chances. One morning, as Nathan prepared for a deposition, Emily surprised him with breakfast. In bed, it was a small gesture, but it carried immense meaning. "You've been carrying so much," she said softly, placing the tray beside him. "Let me share the load today." Nathan smiled, reaching for her hand. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of hope, not because the odds were in their favor, but because he knew he wasn't alone. During the trial, both Nathan and Emily took the stand, recounting their journey with raw honesty. Nathan spoke about the bet, his initial arrogance, and how meeting Emily had forced him to confront the emptiness of his wealth. His voice trembled as he admitted his mistakes, but he held steady, knowing this was his chance to prove he was more than the man he used to be. Emily, for her part, recounted her struggles, from losing her parents to finding strength in unlikely places. She described how Nathan's transformation had inspired her to forgive, not out of obligation, but out of belief in the possibility of change. Michael's lawyer tried to paint them as manipulators, exploiting public sentiment for personal gain, but witnesses from the community projects testified otherwise. A young woman named Sophie, whom Emily had supported during her pregnancy, broke down in tears as she spoke about the impact Emily and Nathan had on her life. "They didn't just give me money or resources," she said. "They gave me hope. And that's something no one can fake." The courtroom erupted into murmurs after Sophie's testimony, and even the judge seemed moved. When the verdict was finally announced, it came as a relief. Michael's claims were dismissed, and Nathan and Emily were cleared of any wrongdoing. The judge praised their commitment to social causes and urged others to follow their example. As they left the courthouse hand in hand, surrounded by cheers from supporters, Emily turned to Nathan. "We did it," she whispered, her eyes shining with tears. "Not just for us, for everyone who believed in us." In the months that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. The scandal faded from the headlines, replaced by stories of the positive changes Nathan and Emily continued to drive. Parker Enterprises underwent a significant overhaul under Nathan's leadership, prioritizing ethical practices and community engagement. The company became a model for corporate responsibility, earning accolades from industry leaders and activists alike. Emily, meanwhile, dedicated herself fully to her art, using exhibitions to raise funds for social initiatives. Her paintings, vibrant and full of emotion, resonated deeply with audiences, further amplifying their message of hope and resilience. Their relationship deepened in ways neither had anticipated. The trials they faced had stripped away pretenses, leaving behind a bond built on trust and mutual respect. One evening, as they walked through the mansion's garden, Nathan stopped beneath the old tree where he had proposed years ago. He pulled Emily close, gazing into her eyes. "Do you remember what I said here?" he asked, his voice tinged with nostalgia. Emily laughed softly, resting her head against his chest. "How could I forget? You promised to dedicate your life to making me happy. And have I kept that promise?" Nathan asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've done more than that," Emily replied, her voice filled with warmth. "You've shown me that love isn't perfect. It's messy, imperfect, and sometimes painful. But it's also worth fighting for." Their conversations often circled back to themes of growth and gratitude. They reflected on how far they'd come, not just individually, but as partners in a shared mission. Nathan often credited Emily with saving him from himself, while Emily acknowledged how Nathan had helped her rediscover her strength. Together, they embodied the idea that people aren't defined by their pasts, but by the choices they make moving forward. Grace, their daughter, grew up surrounded by love and purpose. From a young age, she learned about the importance of kindness and empathy, lessons reinforced by her parents' actions. On weekends, the family volunteered at the community center, teaching children art and entrepreneurship. Grace adored these outings, especially when her mother let her help mix paints, or her father showed her how to plant trees in the garden. Watching her laugh and interact with others, Nathan and Emily felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Their legacy wasn't just in the projects they built, but in the values they instilled in the next generation. Years later, as Grace graduated high school, Nathan and Emily stood side by side, watching her deliver a speech about perseverance and the power of community. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as Grace thanked her parents for teaching her that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples of change. Afterward, during the celebration, friends and colleagues gathered to share memories and express gratitude. Clara, now a close friend, hugged Emily tightly. "You've come such a long way," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm proud of you." As the night drew to a close, Nathan and Emily found themselves alone on the terrace, gazing at the stars. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been if we hadn't met?" Emily asked, leaning her head on Nathan's shoulder. "All the time," Nathan admitted. "But then I realize I wouldn't trade this life for anything. Not even all the money in the world." Emily smiled, her heart swelling with contentment. "Me neither." Their journey had been far from easy, marked by pain, betrayal, and moments of doubt. Yet, through it all, they had discovered something priceless: the transformative power of love and forgiveness. As they stood there, bathed in moonlight, they knew their story wasn't just theirs. It belonged to everyone who dared to believe in second chances. And so, Nathan and Emily's tale became a beacon of hope, inspiring countless others to embrace vulnerability, seek redemption, and strive for a better tomorrow. In a world often divided by differences, their story reminded people that connection, compassion, and courage could bridge even the widest gaps. Together, they proved that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the lives touched and the hearts healed along the way.